everyone, and welcome back to Learning Kitchen Live. We're so glad you're here. My name is Valerie. I'm the Manager of Nutrition Services here at Community Servings, and I'm so excited today to make a really wonderful vegetarian burger with you. So we are going to make cheesy quinoa burgers today. There's so many great components about this, and I'm excited to talk about all of them. It's a really simple recipe, and so we're going to go ahead and get started in a moment. As always, I want to thank our friends at Boston Scientific for sponsoring Learning Kitchen Live and supporting us. And a reminder that after the show today, a link to a survey will be posted in the comments. It's for feedback from all of you. We want to know what you think and what you want to hear about, and we will post the recipe there afterwards as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. As the name implies, this is a quinoa-based veggie burger, and you know, veggie burgers come in a lot of forms, and I think they get a little bit of a bad rap sometimes. There's bean-based ones that are really vegetable-based, and then grain-based burgers. This is definitely a little bit more towards the grain base, but there's some healthy vegetable components in it as well. So what you need for this is first and foremost quinoa, cooked quinoa that is. And we've used it before in Learning Kitchen, but I feel like quinoa can be a weirdly polarizing grain for some people. Like, they don't know what to do with it. And I'll be honest with you, plain cooked quinoa is not my favorite. Like, you need to do something to it, give it a little flavor. It has a little bit of a nutty flavor if you eat it plain. But the thing that's really wonderful about quinoa and why nutritionists love it, why we love using it here, is that it's, first of all, gluten-free grain, and it's high in protein. So it has a lot of things going for it. It is way higher in protein than most other grains. And it can be a really great supplement to someone's diet, especially if someone is gluten-free. So I am using, there's three colors of quinoa. There's white, red, and black. And I am actually using tricolor quinoa, which is a little bit of a mix of all three. I don't know if I should have put some out in a bowl. I don't know if you can see this, but it has a little bit of all three in there. And I am using this because it is what I could find at the store. I could not find just plain white quinoa for some reason the other day. They're all the same nutritionally for the most part. What I didn't know, and I should actually give a shout out to our awesome intern, Jamie Weissenberg. She's from Simmons University. She is the one who helped to source this recipe and who came up with some fun quinoa facts for me, which is that when they cook up, white, red, and black quinoa all have a slightly different texture, which I don't think I had ever paid attention to before. But this is what cooked quinoa looks like. And it may be a little hard to see on camera, but the white quinoa cooks up a little fluffier and looser than the brown or the red and the black quinoa, which retain a little bit more of their shape and have a little crunch to them. Quinoa cooks just like rice. So to make the quinoa for this recipe, I used 1 cup of dried quinoa, which I rinsed off. Sometimes it can be a little dusty. And put it in this pot with 1 3/4 cup of water. Let it come to a boil, and it's simmered for 15 minutes, and it's done. That's all you need to do. It cooks exactly like white rice would. If you didn't have quinoa, you could substitute other leftover grains for this. If you had leftover rice, I think farro or barley might work. I'm not sure if it would hold together as well, but regardless, you can make endless substitutions in recipes like this. So for this recipe, we are going to use 2 cups of cooked quinoa, and a little farther down the ingredient list is actually 1/3 cup of chopped scallions. So those are in here already. I just thought I'd save a bowl and put them in. So I'm going to add my quinoa. 1 cup made a little more than 2 cups. I have a little left over, which will be great for something else later. So I let that cook. It's still pretty hot, but I'm gonna let it cool off a little more. But then one of the other magic ingredients in this is actually sweet potato. This would be a really great recipe if you have leftover mashed sweet potatoes, leftover roasted sweet potatoes. You could do this with white potatoes too. It really doesn't matter. So this is a great way to use up leftover potatoes. But if you don't have that, what I did was I took a sweet potato and I cooked it in the microwave. You don't have to, like, baking or making a cooked potato doesn't have to be a big production. What you do is you take just a regular washed sweet potato, and you can use a fork or a knife carefully. This is a giant knife, I know, and you want to just puncture it all over, kind of on all sides, and that's to let the steam escape so it doesn't explode in the microwave, which can happen. And that's all you do. You puncture it a bunch of times, put it in the microwave on a couple of paper towels, cook it on high for about 3 minutes, turn it over, cook it for maybe 2 or 3 more minutes depending on how strong your microwave is, and then just check it. And you want to be able to stick a knife or a fork through it pretty easily without much resistance, and you have a cooked potato. It's super simple. So this recipe calls for a half a cup of mashed sweet potato, so I definitely don't need the whole one. But I am going to take half of it. This isn't going to peel as easily as I want, so I'm going to use my knife and just cut the skin off. You could also use a spoon and just scoop the flesh out of it. And you want to do this a little ahead of time so it's cool enough to handle, because basically when you cook this in the microwave, it just steams. So this is, it just gets really hot. All right. So we have cooked sweet potato, and I'm just going to take a fork and mash it down, because that is going to go into this and be part of what binds these together, these burgers together, but it also provides a lot of fiber and a lot of great nutrients. Sweet potatoes are super rich in beta carotene. It's what gives them their orange color. So they're super delicious and healthy, and it's also going to give these like a nice sweetness too. All right, so I have about a half a cup of mashed sweet potato. That might be a little more than a half a cup. All right, and then we are also going to add 2 eggs to this. That's also going to help bind all of this together. So I have just 2 large eggs. I'm going to just beat them up lightly. And pour that in. And then some final ingredients are going to be some seasonings and then cheese, which is, in my opinion, going to make these extra delicious. But if you did not want to add the cheese, you could certainly leave it out. We are adding cheddar cheese. I have some sharp shredded white cheddar, but you could put mozzarella in this, Monterey Jack, cheddar Jack, whatever you like and whatever you have on hand. All right. So the final ingredients here are going to be 3 tablespoons of flour, which again are going to help bind this. If you did need or want to make this gluten-free, you could use just a gluten-free flour substitution. That was a tongue twister. So I'm going to put those in. And we are going to add 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. I am going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And this is, again, something that if you don't like heat, you could totally leave this out. If you like a lot of spice, you could add more than this. I'm going with a 1/4 teaspoon. That's actually going to give this a good kick. But, again, add or omit to your personal preference. And then a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And that is it. So I'm just going to mix these up a little more. One of the things with veggie burgers when you're making them, you want them to hold together. That's actually, whenever I make a lot of bean burgers and grain-based burgers, and one of the things that's I find to be really hard is that they fall apart when they cook. What this recipe calls for is forming the burgers and refrigerating them for about 15 minutes. We are not going to do that because then you'd have to sit here and listen to me just talk for 15 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and cook them. So my disclaimer is these may not hold together quite as well in the pan, but if you formed 6 patties, refrigerated them for 15 minutes or even longer, you could refrigerate them overnight if you needed to. Everything hydrates, like the flour will hydrate, everything will stick together really well, and they'll probably cook up a little better. But in the interest of time, we're just going to give them a cook here now. So I am going to just put my frying pan over medium heat and add this is a nice nonstick pan, but I'm going to add a little bit of oil. You could bake these if you really wanted to as well. So if you wanted to just put them on a pan and stick them on a greased pan in the oven, you could bake them as well. Now, a great tip is when you're making these patties, if you want them to be less sticky on your hands, coat your hands in oil first. I'm going to just use gloves because we have them available here, but coating your hands in oil does help. All right, let's see. You know, I don't have a measurement for what you should scoop out for each burger, but I kind of look at this bowl and I'm going to, I know it should make about 6 burgers, so I'll just make a couple of patties that I think will end up making us or giving us 6 burgers. So this is like a super nutrient packed veggie burger, by the way. It has 10 grams of protein per burger, which for a veggie burger is really good. And I can't remember how much fiber is in it. 3 grams of fiber per burger, which is also really good. Getting a lot of good nutrients in there. All right. So I am going to just form this into a nice little patty and stick that in the pan. You don't want to overcrowd your pan when you're doing these. It can make them hard to flip, but also things start steaming versus browning. So I'm going to just put 3 or 4 in to start. Oh my goodness, I left out the cheese. So we're going to have 2 non-cheesy quinoa burgers, and then the rest are going to be extra cheesy. This is, well, this happens. I made a banana bread over the weekend, and my kids won't eat it unless I put chocolate chips in it. And I made it and put it in the oven without chocolate chips in, and then realized my mistake, pulled it out, poured chocolate chips right in the baking pan, mixed them in, and then stuck it back in the oven. It didn't look as pretty, but it tasted just fine. What you don't see is behind the scenes here are the staff watching this, and I bet they're all calculating in their head how they're going to get their hands on one of the extra cheesy ones and not one of the ones without the cheese. So that was 3/4 of a cup of shredded cheddar cheese that I just I put in there. So we're just going to let those cook for a few minutes on each side, and then we'll flip them over and let them finish cooking. Because they have raw egg in them, you do want to make sure they get cooked, and they're obviously more delicious once they solidify and get crispy. If you wanted to make these vegan, I think they would probably hold together without the eggs, or you could try making flax eggs. They do have a little bit of binding power to them, so that might be an option. I have not tried that out myself, but if you were vegan and wanted to leave out the cheese and make this whole thing vegan, I think you could do that possibly with flax eggs. So while these are cooking, you know, a great thing about burgers is they're so customizable, right? Like you can serve them up however you want. You could serve this over a salad. These will keep really well too if you cook up a bunch of them and don't eat them right away. You can freeze them and then just reheat them in the microwave. But if you want to serve them on a bun, I always try to go for whole wheat or whole grain buns when possible. When I went to the store, much like I couldn't find white quinoa, I couldn't find whole wheat burger buns. I don't know what the particular shortage was that day. So I actually got these whole wheat sandwich thins, which I had kind of forgotten about, but I love. They're lower in calories than a whole burger bun. They're whole grain, and they're actually pretty delicious. So we're going to plate those up on sandwich thins. These are super pretty too, by the way. I don't know if if it's captured on the film, but they have because I use the tricolor quinoa, they look really pretty. They have the green scallions, the sweet potatoes, the cheese. They just look really nice. So I am gonna try flipping one of these over. Oh, perfect. Veggie burgers, I would say, are important to do in a non-stick pan if you can, or a really well-seasoned cast iron pan, because they are so delicate and can fall apart so easily. All right. These look beautiful. Let me get our plates. So you could top these with whatever you want. We have some red onion because that's like my favorite. You could put extra cheese on top. You'd want to watch your sodium though. Lettuce, hot sauce would probably be my personal favorite. I'd probably cover these in hot sauce and red onion and be super happy with that. Just going to let these cook up for one more minute. But you know, the thing that's really nice about this recipe is you can use leftover grains. We're always talking here on Learning Kitchen Live about using leftovers and creating less food waste. So you can use leftover grains that you have. You can use leftover potato if you have it. You know, I now have like a half of a cooked sweet potato that I will probably have for lunch tomorrow. I'll cut it in half. What I love doing with sweet potatoes like that is I'll probably cut it in half and cover it with some black beans and salsa and maybe a little cheese, and that'll be a really delicious lunch. And you can use, again, whatever kind of cheese you have. If you didn't have scallions, you could put regular onion. You could actually put chopped up red onion in this and really tailor the seasonings to be whatever you like. So that's why I love this recipe. It's super versatile. All right. So I think these are pretty done. So there you have it. Super fast and super easy. Now I know I had the quinoa and the potato cooked ahead of time, so it's a little deceiving in terms of how long it actually takes to make these, but I do think from start to finish you could pull this off in about 30 minutes, including cooking the quinoa and the potatoes and getting all the ingredients together. It's a really easy weeknight meal and a really nice vegetarian alternative to a beef or turkey burger or something like that. And super affordable. You know, I know you can buy these in the grocery store, but this is a really yummy homemade protein and nutrition packed veggie burger. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this and learning how to make it. Please let us know in the comments if you make something like this. We'd love to hear from you. And once again, thank you to our sponsors at Boston Scientific. And we will put the recipe in the comments later on today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week.